There's a lot of everyday innovation because everything is changing around us, technology-wise. People are changing, times are changing. It's hard, but you have to learn how to be flexible and resilient, and your time will come as well if you just, stay the course and stay with it.
Hello everybody, that is my guest Leia Tyebjee. She's Building Pylot Studios, a global platform empowering emerging artists. In this episode we discuss the challenges of creating spaces for artists, breaking barriers in a male-dominated industry, and how Pylot Studios is redefining art curation. Leia also shares her thoughts on AI in art, the importance of community, and why she still chooses to work with film photography in the digital age. And finally, we talk bananas and much, much more. So please enjoy the show. Thank you. Hello, Leia. Thank you for coming on the Indian Startup Show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Please tell listeners what you're building.
Great. I'm Leia. I am one of the co-founders of Pylot Studios, an organization that I run myself and my co-partner, Yitzhak Franco. Mm-hmm. It is an interdisciplinary creative platform dedicated to artistic design, curation, and community engagement. Mm-hmm. Pylot was founded over a cup of coffee, very honestly, in 2019. And Yitzhak and I kind of sat down and we were just chatting and talking about the artists we admired, exhibitions, and honestly, the frustrating gaps in the art world and how so many talented artists were struggling to find a space, struggling to find opportunities, and a community that truly, truly supported them.
Awesome stuff. So you started in 2019 over a cup of coffee. How are things so far?
So we started in 2019 in December. Okay. And as you can imagine, everything hit a standstill.
That's it, yeah.
3 months later, as it did for everyone. Mm-hmm. And we took a bit of a breather to figure out what we wanted to do next and how we could give back to the communities that have given us so much, especially during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Since 2019, we have worked with more than 50 artists.
Wow, okay.
And have had 4 exhibitions since the first one in 2019. We have now decided to focus on honing in on these specific artists. So our first exhibition, we started with 20 artists, which is a great number of people. Mm-hmm. But I think as many people in the art world know, sometimes people like to have a show with a smaller number of people and not so many. So we have now honed in on how many people we have, and we try to have less than 5 or so artists. Mm-hmm. And then this gives them the opportunity to expand and not just show one piece of artwork. They can show 5 or 6, and they can really showcase their creativity in more than one medium. They can have more space on the walls. They can have more collaboration with each other. And it creates a sense of community building throughout the shows that we put up.
Is that what you expected when you started?
I mean, I think we feel so great that this has even lasted for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And honestly, we as founders really thrived on creating a space where we could have meaningful conversations, where artists felt supported, and where viewers could engage with the work in ways that would challenge or inspire them. So for example, in our last show, Form versus Fiber, which was in December, we had one of our artists who really did a retelling of the flag of the US.
Okay.
Which is definitely risky, especially in the times we're living in right now. And we really wanted to have that strike a conversation between viewers and the artists as well.
Let's go back to the early days then. What were the hardest decisions they had to make? How did you get your first customers, clients, as it were? How did you spread the word, as it were? So
I think the hardest part in 2019 was finding people who were interested in this and reaching out to people at first. Mm-hmm. Once we started, meeting people through our work, we both Yitzhak and I went to Sarah Lawrence College, which is a small liberal arts college in upstate New York. Mm-hmm. So we did have a lot of artist friends. We ourselves are artists. So we did have a lot of people, but we also wanted to expand our reach. We didn't just want our 5 friends or 10 friends to be in the show. We wanted to, we wanted to help people, which is the whole point of Pylot Studios. So I do think that was a very challenging part, which was trying to find people who we didn't just know. Since 2019, personally, we've had people, apply for our exhibitions from Germany, from Denver, Colorado. And like, we don't have a reach in those places. We don't have family. We don't have friends. Those are just people who found us and have applied. So I think that was a significant challenge at first, finding a way to like maintain inclusivity and accessibility while growing our audience as well.
How do you decide who gets to go on the platform then?
So we have a very thorough process, honestly. We first sit down, and kind of the same way how we started our first show is how we do every other show, because it's kind of like a tradition now. We sit down over a cup of coffee and try and find a theme. Okay. We find a theme based on current events, on something that we are interested in as artists. So I can just expand on our themes. Our first show was called Pylot, Pilot, not the way our company is spelled. So a little different, because it was our pilot program. The first one. Our second one was called Name, Place, Animal, Thing. It was kind of a play on words and games. The next one was Unpopular Opinions, which we really pushed artists to showcase what their unpopular opinions were through their artwork. And the last one was called Form versus Fiber.
Okay, cool. What were the unpopular opinions?
Well, there were so many. And one was how we look at ourselves through a screen.
Okay.
And that was a big one, especially because that, everything is through a screen now. And how we look at ourselves through our phones. Another way we showcase unpopular opinions is the way we curated the show. We just had one of the paintings on the floor. We did not hang it on the wall. We put everything else on the wall except one painting. So we knew that would be kind of controversial, and people would be kind of confused if that was on purpose or accidental. Yeah. So going back to your previous question about how we do the show, how we go about this is we choose a theme, we put out an open call, we put it out on Instagram, we put it out with our networks. So we put it out with our Sarah Lawrence network. I graduated from a master's program from Columbia, so we put it out through there. We do it through our people we know through working as artists. And then we get around usually 50, 60 submissions. And then we sit one weekend and we narrow it down into who fits the theme the best way. And then once we have 10, say we have 15 people or 10 people, we then see which artist would work with another artist. How would we curate the show with these 5 people versus how we would curate it with these 5 people? And then we just find the best 5 or 6 that work together.
And then what's your background then?
I'm originally from India, and I'm from Mumbai. Okay. And growing up, I definitely had a very artistic upbringing. My parents, we would visit museums both in India and whenever we traveled. I had a very cultural sort of upbringing. And I was very involved in like the arts through my parents. After growing up in Mumbai or Bombay, however people want to say, I came to the US to go to school for my undergraduate, and I went to Sarah Lawrence College for a liberal arts degree, and I studied visual arts, economics, and theater. So very diverse, as you can tell, by what I studied. And right after Sarah Lawrence, I worked at 2 galleries, Gagosian Gallery and David Zwirner Gallery in New York. And then the pandemic kind of hit, and I decided it was time to go back home to Bombay. And I worked at an auction house called Pandols, which I'm hoping some of your listeners would know what that is. But it is one of the biggest auction houses in India. And that's honestly where I got my super formal arts education.
Okay.
I learned how to work in a small team. I learned how people ran their business. I learned how to write about art. I learned about how to look at art. I learned how to measure a painting versus measuring a sculpture. I learned how to tell what is acrylic paint versus oil paint versus watercolor. And that's really where my formal education, I honestly think, was. And I owe a lot to the team
Nice.
at Bundles. During that time, Yitzhak and myself talked about what Pylot was going to be, how we were going to expand Pylot, as I was in India and he was in New York. And I decided that I wanted to go back to New York and study more, learn about arts administration, which was what I studied at Columbia. And I graduated last year from that.
Does coming from Mumbai influence your work then?
Yeah, it definitely does. Specifically my personal work. So I studied photography, film photography to be more exact. And it definitely, my whole experience is driven from my upbringing and from growing up in Mumbai. So when I'm taking photos, I love to take photos of not just a person. I like to take photos of a street vendor with a building, because that's very common for me growing up in Bombay.
Yeah, 100%.
It is. You see that everywhere. Or like I like to take photos of the car with like some trash on the street. I mean, I know that's very common even in New York, but it is also very common for my growing up in Bombay. I have worked on a few projects specifically in Bombay, photography wise. Specifically, again, when the coastal road was being built in Bombay, which I'm not sure if you know much about. It's this big bridge that connects the city, and it was super controversial when it was being made. And I did work on, I kind of like snuck in to the sites and took a lot of photos, kind of documenting the destruction of the land. And I really loved using film in the sense that it's so raw and kind of, it feels very manual, which it is, obviously. And everyone knows that you can't manipulate film, which is why I really like it. You get the raw emotions, you get the raw like photo. It's like everything is out there for everyone to see, because you can't really, if you are developing in a dark room, it's really hard to edit, especially when you're learning in the beginning, which is kind of how I fell in love with film.
You still use film then rather than digital?
I still use film, yes.
Wow. And what are like the reactions of the people you're taking photos of? Do you ask them first, or do you just take the photo first and then ask them later or something?
I think if it's a friend, they know I'm going to do it regardless. And with strangers on the street, I try not to take photos of people that are super invasive. I don't want to be in anyone's way. I don't usually ask. I take photos of people like across the street as they're walking, and I don't usually ask questions. But if it is like a invasive photo, then I will probably go up to them and be like, I am taking a photo of you. Just so you know, I try not to take photos of kids at all, or people who would not be comfortable with having their photo anywhere.
Have you got any like tips or advice for our listeners on taking photos?
I think everyone should experiment with film once in their life, even if it's a Polaroid camera or a point and shoot or something like that. It's very fun. It's something that you don't have control over, which is the really awesome part, is that you don't have control over it. You just get to see what it is like after like 2 weeks, which we don't get to experience anymore with our phones or digital cameras. So everyone should try film once. That's my tip.
So you take a photo and you have to wait 2 weeks for it to develop.
Not always, but I think it just depends on how long you shoot it. My rolls have 36 exposures. So if I shoot it all in one day, I can get the film back in 2 days. But if I take, a week to shoot it, then I do expect that from the first photo, it would be 10 days.
That's like the old days. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you do black and white photo, or is it color?
It's mostly black and white. I do experiment with color quite a lot, but I prefer black and white. Again, I think this like raw emotion is portrayed way more with the black and white than it is with the color. Again, I just love it a lot.
And in terms of systems, habits, rituals to stay creativity sharp, do you have any systems or habits or rituals?
Yeah, so when I'm not doing pilot studios, I teach
Ah, okay.
young kids.
Oh, nice.
And I think that's very inspiring and has been super rewarding as well. And you learn so much from kids every day, and you learn a lot. And I think that's what keeps me going. Teaching these kids what I learned as a kid, and also teaching them in ways that I was not taught, ways that like I wish I was taught,
Mm,
perhaps. And teaching people how to see things in a new way is, I think, then I come home and I'm like, wait, but I never saw it in that way. Maybe I
mm,
should look at it in a different way too. Because everything is, everything can be seen in a different way.
mm, mm.
So yeah.
What would you say some of the biggest mistakes and misconceptions, young artists have when trying to break into the art world?
Biggest mistakes. I think the biggest mistake is just like thinking that it's all gonna come to you. You really just have to like make it happen and try to approach everyone. Keep making art, keep approaching people, and try to do it yourself, because that's been super rewarding for me, doing it myself and helping other people. That once you realize that, it all, you should just try and rely on yourself. And once you do that, you can start making collaborations and partnerships and approaching people, and start approaching people from day one. Reach out to people, shamelessly reach out to people. It's something I never did because I was very shy, kind of grew up like that and didn't want to like approach people, but there's no need to be shy, I think.
Mm,
And I think be bold in like asking people questions, asking people what's wrong with your work, asking people if they would buy your work,
mm.
if they would put your work up in a show. Because at the most, people will say no, which you already are probably prepared for.
Obviously, you get rejected from time to time. What motivates you to keep going, though?
I think just like adapting to the different times is helpful for me. Recognizing that you need to rethink sometimes, you need to innovate more, make deeper, like foster a deeper connection with someone. And that helps me be more resilient.
Mm, mm.
Perhaps it is, if I someone says no to doing a pilot show, we say, okay, keep us in the loop if you ever want to do something again. And we ask someone else, or we go find someone else, because someone is going to say yes at some point,
Mm-hmm.
especially in New York City, huge city where everyone wants to be doing something amazing and great and big.
What were your first impressions of New York?
My first impressions of New York, I definitely thought it was big, even though I come from a very big city. The smell did not help at all.
What did they smell of? Like sewage.
Sewage,
Ooh.
rats, other bodily fluids that
Oh.
people have. So that didn't help at all. But also, it was very familiar, the feeling I felt. It felt kind of like home to me. As growing up in Bombay, definitely felt like home and still feels like home. New York has felt like a second home for me for quite some time now, and has been, because it's such a big city, because it's very similar to Bombay, I kind of just feel at home at all times.
I must talk about AI. That seems to be the hot topic at the moment. Have you tried it? Have you used it? Do you not care?
I have definitely used it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to lie and say I
Mm.
have not used it. I do have my issues with it. I think there
Yeah.
needs to be more policy created for
Mm.
using AI, especially when it's creating artwork or taking from someone's
Yeah.
art
Yeah.
or plagiarizing, because there is copyrights
Mm.
everywhere. We should be careful about stuff like that. I think people, unfortunately, with the times, we do, or fortunately for some people, we do need to evolve with technology. And that sometimes does mean evolving our art with technology. And we've kind of embraced it at Pilot. We have a lot of people who do a lot of technological work in
Mm.
our exhibitions, and we really have embraced it as much as we can. We
Mm.
try to stay away from it also as much as we can, and not rely on it, and definitely make sure that we're legally doing the right thing. But
Mm.
I do think that we've engaged with technology and art a lot, and a lot of our
Mm.
exhibitions have very high tech products and
Yeah, yeah.
mediums in them.
Last few questions then. Yeah, what's been the most surprising lesson you've learned about, the art world since you started in this industry, as it were?
I think just kind of like learning how to balance, as you said, how do you keep on sustaining yourself as a creative? I think that was the biggest lesson, learning how to balance creative integrity while also being operationally sustainable with Pylot. And the lesson is still being learned, I should say. It's a learning curve. We're navigating a lot of resource constraints in these new times and trying to find a way to grow our audience, but also make some money and learn how to work for ourselves. At the end of the day, that's honestly what both Yitzhak and I want, is to work for ourselves in 10 years and build this platform and engage with people from our communities.
Yeah, there seems to be like a massive concept where artists always have to struggle, but that's not always true, is it? You always hear about the struggling artist, but that's not true, is it? Or is it?
I think it depends. A lot of artists do struggle. I think I don't want to discount people's experiences. A lot of people do struggle, but a lot of people do not struggle. A lot of times it's about your luck, about where you are, about who you know. That works out for people. And so a lot of times you don't have those things. So you do have to make your own way, which is really like Yitzhak and I have done that. We've made our own way. We partnered with a gallery for 3 of our 4 exhibitions and have built a really great relationship with them. But through our own network of people we've known through grad school or friends, we've paved our own path. A lot of people already have these connections and already are built with them. I think I personally think people should make the best of what's being given to them and then also try to make the best out of things that you don't have.
Yeah, make the best of what you've got. What advice would you give to creatives then who want to start their own ventures in the art world, so do something similar like yourself?
I would say it's hard. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of everyday innovation because everything is changing around us, technology-wise. People are changing, times are changing. It's hard, but you have to learn how to be flexible and resilient, and your time will come as well if you just, stay the course and stay with it. Yeah.
A question you probably get asked a lot, but a woman in a traditionally male-dominated industry. How do you approach breaking barriers and making an impact?
I definitely, it's hard, and you think that it's the art world, there's a lot of women. There are a lot of women, but there's also a lot of men, and it's especially hard being someone who is an Indian woman in the US. There are a lot, but also there aren't a lot. So I think it's hard, but I definitely, again, have found a way to make it work. I try my best to remember that there are women in other fields who have to go through the same thing, unfortunately, and women have overcome a lot over the last few years and hopefully will continue overcoming a lot. Unfortunately, that's the way the world has made it for us.
What are you working on right now then? Anything interesting?
Yes, absolutely. So with Pylot Studios, we're expanding our programming a little more to include public partnerships. We're hopefully tying up with a few organizations. It's in the pipeline, so I'm not going to delve into it too much just for the sake of transparency. I'm going to say as much as I can. But we are working on more public programming, on ways to become a little bit more of a for-profit organization and how that would work for us. We are also working on our soon-to-be summer exhibition that we'll hopefully release an open call for in the next 2 months and have a new group of artists working with us by June.
What would this company look like in 10 years from now? If you were to do a Pylot Studios exhibition in 10 years?
So what it would look like in 10 years, Pylot would hopefully have traveling exhibitions with new audiences across different cities. We hope to collaborate with different brands and institutions to merge art, technology, and design in innovative ways. And also, we really still hope to work on community-focused programming in public spaces for our artists as well as audiences.
Has anyone helped you on your journey?
Honestly, so many people. I will say my parents a lot. They funded my education from my whole life and definitely exposed me to a lot of the art world that is currently as we have it. The whole team at Pandos, that was the best mentorship I've received. My partner in Pylot Studios, Yitzhak, I wouldn't be able to run this company all by myself. And that has been very helpful. But yeah, I mean, friends, family, we wouldn't be able to do it without them. And just people like all the people we've met along the way have taught us something.
How did you meet your co-founder?
Well, we both went to Sarah Lawrence.
Oh, okay.
And we met the second day of Sarah Lawrence, and we've been friends and partners in a business since then.
What were your first impressions after the second day?
My first impression, well, he's an artist as well. So I definitely knew he was an artist from meeting him. And he was very nice and very friendly from that first day.
I've written down bananas. You know why?
Yes, I do know.
Okay. So I'm just reading an article where it was sold. It was, I think it was a New York art auction, a real banana duct tape to a wall, and it sold for 6.2 million.
It is mad, but you know, art can be hilarious too. Art can be funny, and I think they
for 6.2 million.
I think Sotheby's really honed in on the funny aspect of that artwork. And Maurizio Catalan, who is the artist of that, his work is just so whimsical and it's so great. And I'm so glad people are really recognizing his work. I know 6.2 million is a lot of money to anyone and everyone. So it is insane that it sells like that, but it's conceptual artwork is where it's at nowadays, especially in the auction world.
Would you change anything looking back on your career so far?
I don't think so. Maybe learning at a younger age how to stand up for myself in the art world, as it is a very male-dominated world. And sometimes people like to take advantage of people who work hard. So yeah, I think that's maybe one thing I would learn or change. I wouldn't change it, but maybe learn the lesson of people will take advantage of you. So learn how to say no, or learn how to redirect some questions and queries.
And when it comes to art, what's your favorite themes?
My favorite themes, I mean, anything that is film, I'm very biased. I love it. I also love movies as a medium. And I did see The Brutalist recently and really liked how it was shot. And the way it was shot was very interesting to me. So I did love that as a theme. I also really like to see when people merge mediums, which, you know, whether you're doing painting and then adding some kind of collage to it, or you have a video, but there's also a sculptural aspect to it. So I really like that when people do that.
If you had to start over today with no contacts and just your knowledge, how would you go about building Pylot Studios from scratch? So if you had no contacts, you know, you've just arrived in New York, you know, getting used to the smell, as it were.
I think making friends. Because as I've said, my business partner is my friend, which I know some people might say, you know, you shouldn't get into business with someone who you have a personal relationship with, but it's worked out for us, touch wood. And make friends with people, find a community, find your people. That would be what I would do. Find my people. And once you do that, honestly, you can do anything.
Last question for people who want more information on Pylot Studios. What must they do?
Well, you can follow us on Instagram at Pylot Studios. You can find us on our website, which is pilotstudios.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow me if you'd like. It's Leia Tyebjee, and I can send it to you so you can put it up. And you can follow my partner, which is, his name on Instagram is kind of confusing, but it's YTZK.
Awesome stuff, Leia. Thank you for coming on the show today. I much appreciated it.
Thank you so much for having me.